There's one thing to talk about liberty on the campaign trail, but if you can't manifest a vote that preserves liberty, get out of the space. The reality is our media in this state is corrupted, and we have members on our board that use power plays, and they play with the public perception of other board members in order to browbeat them. The USBE has become a closed club that wages war on the minds, values, and innocence of our children while systematically stripping parents of any meaningful voice. And then board leadership released to the public and the press a fake document that I had never seen. And then all of a sudden, I'm held accountable for the document
Wow.
they made public facing when I did not vote for that document. I voted for a different one.
Corruption has, of course, been in the news a lot, especially lately with different things being released in the media about certain individuals and their islands. And it really brings to mind the fact that this isn't just somewhere else, but we have corruption in our local communities, which is what I talk about in my book, Invasion. And so we have a special guest, Christina Bogus, and I really
Yeah.
appreciate her patience with me. I'm so glad we're able to get together. And
Yeah.
just a little bit of background, and I'd love to have you tell us more about you as well. But Christina is in the Utah Board of Education, not correct, Board of Education,
State school board. Yeah.
State School Board.
Mhm.
And recently, you made a lot of waves and a lot of news because you announced that you were not running.
Mhm.
And some of the reasons why you were not running really intrigued me. And I thought it was really important for more people to hear more about what you've seen and
Mhm.
some of the reasons behind your move to decide not to run. Before we started this interview, you talked about how some of the media stories reported that you have resigned, but that's not the case.
Yeah.
You've just announced that you are not going to be running for reelection. So
Yeah.
before we get into that, though, the reasons why, I think just everybody's going to want to hear this, I think.
Mhm.
But before we get to that, like, give us your background. What made you decide to run for school board? What are some of the, and then, how, what this, how did you get elected? And then get into the, what you saw, like the reasons why you're like, I'm not running again. And let's just go from there.
Well, I think if you want to talk about what made me decide to run for school board, I think it's because I see this long, slow march, and it wasn't something that was hidden. Like, people talk about, oh, this, I've just never seen this. And I'm like, I don't know how you haven't seen it. It's been there for like 2 decades.
Right.
And so when I moved to Utah in 2015, I knew instantly that there was something wrong with education in this state. And I knew it because I'm a teacher. So I started going to teacher trainings, and I'm like, wait, what? Hold on. And so if somebody had told me 10 years ago in another state that this was a thing, I probably would have been like some other teachers. I'm like, no, that's not happening here, because I don't believe it was happening in my previous positions. But when I got here, I was like, whoa, hold up. So there were just some things in teacher training and how buildings were managed, and then curriculum that I saw, and the adoption of the whole word, like sight word thing for teaching reading. So we're teaching whole word language or whole language reading. And so there were just so many things. And then as I walked through that, then I saw what what was clearly becoming a UN agenda that was being acted out in our state. And if you've never read Sustainable Development Goal 4, you need to read Sustainable Development Goal 4, and then you need to go into what's going on with UNESCO and some of the things that they are putting forward at this time. And then in 2022, a document was released out of UNESCO, and it's this long document, but I'm seeing these things, and it's just a clear pattern, if you will. And so when 2021 came, there were some people that had asked me to run for the board, and I was like, yeah, no, I desire to live a quiet life. And it didn't take very long before my husband said, no, I think you need to run for the board. And so we made that decision together as a family, and I ran for the board in 2022.
What part of
And
the
then
state do you represent on the board?
West Jordan, Kearns, and Taylorsville.
Okay.
And so I ran, I won. It was an interesting election cycle. And then I started my service in 2023.
When you say interesting election cycle, tell us more about that.
Well, anybody who runs for office knows that there are things that happen during election cycles that are super weird. One was they just made up stuff out of right field, and you can spend all your time online responding to all the fake stuff that people say, and and that stuff is out there. It's about me. It doesn't have a kernel of truth to it, but it's out there. There were some really mean people that I had, made all my family photos private because I didn't want to. I called it pimping your kids for votes. I'm like, no, I'm running for office. My children are not, and so I had made some images private on my social media, and lo and behold, somebody who's supposedly a friend released that, and then my opponent's crew decided to make fun of my children on the internet and distort their faces with
Wow.
whatever they did, like weird stuff, weird
That's
stuff.
crazy.
Yeah,
That's
really weird
like
things.
one of those like cardinal rules is you leave the kids alone.
Not in Utah, apparently. Apparently in Utah, the kids are on the table,
Wow.
and yeah. So it is what it is. They survived, we survived, and um, yeah, and then I decided to run for office again in 2024, and I ran for Senate then, and I did not win. I lost by 7 points, but
Was that in
it
the
was a good
election,
race.
or was that like in the at the convention that you lost?
I won convention.
Okay.
I lost in a forced primary.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Forced because of the convention was too close, or because they got signatures?
Uh, Signatures.
Of course.
Yeah. There you go.
Had to
So,
buy the election. Fantastic. So, so you noticed that. So that was pretty amazing that you spent some. You got elected to the school board. You went through all
mhm,
that, and
yeah.
even after all that, you're like, I'm going to go for a different office, and I'm going to run again. And you
Well,
decided to do that.
believe it or not, I was asked to run for Senate.
Sure.
There were some legislators that had asked me to run for that office, and which tells me a whole lot about Utah because they sit in your living room, they ask you to run for office, and then in the very next breath they endorse your opponent.
So there was maybe a different reason why they wanted you to run.
That question is for them.
Fascinating.
I just know that there are many people in this state in very high places who cannot be trusted.
Well, hopefully, maybe I know that you got to be careful, but it'd be nice to be able to name some names as we go along. But I understand that that's maybe something that you're not um, willing to get into at this moment. But so you've spent a couple of years, and you decide to go to
Mhm,
that, and then that pulls you back because of that election, the results of that election.
mhm.
You can now focus again on the school board.
Yeah, absolutely.
So 2000, so that was 2024. But
Mhm,
then towards the later end of 2025,
mhm.
you have a change of heart of decide not to run again. What are the things that you've seen since you first got elected to the last year's announcement?
Well, I think in 2025, there are some things that were significant that happened early in my service on the board. It was very clear that good work was not going to take place. We didn't have the votes to do good work. And so a small group of us sat down and we were super clear with one another, and we decided we're going to do the best work we can on the board, but we don't even have 4 votes to do good work.
Hmm.
So we decided we're going to change things in the election, and we are going to get enough votes to do good work in the election.
Mhm.
And so in the last election cycle, I put a lot of time in, a lot of effort, a lot of my own money. I had weekly meetings with candidates to help inform them, to talk to them not only about, how to vote. And when I say how to vote, I mean, like, what are the principles that guide your vote?
Right.
What are those things and how you work through that? What is the Republican Party platform and how does that play out inside those walls? What are the principles of freedom? And how do you ensure that your vote ensures the principles of freedom? What is representative governance, and how do you preserve representative governance? So, just as an example, the board concedes their constitutional authority. I don't know, probably 30 times a board meeting, but the that was a little bit of hyperbole and a little bit not, Ben.
Hmm. Sure.
So, when we had these meetings, and so then we got some what I thought were good people elected to the board, and it didn't take them 30 days to fold. And so when those things are happening, you have to ask yourself, are there people in this state really interested in freedom? Because and when I say tons and tons of time, so much effort, and they decided that they would rather be comfortable in corruption than be courageous in the
Mhm.
preservation of freedom. And that's just really where we're at. And so when things came to, am I going to run again, I really thought about the return on investment and what I'm putting into this, which in different times and spaces can be 60 or 70 hours a week. It can be really time consuming to do this work. And board packets come out, and sometimes they are 3,000, 4,000 pages. And you have a week to read this information, and
Good
then you're
Lord.
thrust into this game again. And so I I just decided that, in many ways the board's work is performative. And at what point do you say my efforts can be used better elsewhere?
So when you say
And so,
performative, you're talking about like it's a show, correct?
oh yes, very
Yeah.
much so, very much so.
Not like performative, like, hey, we're performing a work. We're performing a show. It's a fiction.
Yeah, yeah. There's times we'll debate something for hours. A great example of performative would have been, I think it was June 29 of 2021. There was 2021 or 2022. I can't remember, but anyhow, it was in the summer, and they were working on what's called a model policy. And the USBE held a special board meeting for this model policy. It was super important. Has, the press is talking about it, and it's all of these things that's supposed to be really important. And the reality is, a model policy is something that no one is required to read, no one is required to use, and if you don't use it, there are no consequences. But we had a special board meeting.
Sounds like the party platform.
Yeah, it, it's it's just a very interesting thing. And when I say that, like, a lot of time and effort went into that. Many people went into that space, expecting to do this work, and really it was merely performative. And so much of the work that we do at the board is merely performative. Recently, we've been caught up in the drama of the legislature's budget cuts,
Mhm.
wherein we're supposed to make cuts to education funding, but that's something over which the USBE has no control. The legislature holds the purse strings. The PEA and the EAC do all the work, and it's not something that we really have control over. Do we have a voice? Yes, but they're asking us to make the decisions and then ignoring our recommendations. So
Right.
at what point do we not call that performative?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like just legislation does the same thing oftentimes where they prohibit something, but if somebody does the thing that they prohibit, the
Hmm.
legislation has no consequence, and so therefore it's not
Yep.
really a law.
Well,
So
a law without teeth is merely a suggestion.
right. Exactly. And
It's
something they
and,
can
and we
use
do
as a
that a
blunt
lot in
and
Utah.
say, "Oh, we can't do that," but if they don't want to obey it, then they can just ignore it.
Yep. Yeah.
So, taking a couple steps back, you were talking about how the Board of Education, when you were running, didn't have enough votes on it to do anything good.
Hmm.
I know that there are several individuals, if not all of them, that claim during election
Hmm.
cycles that they were, liberty oriented, parent right
Hmm.
oriented, constitutionalists. One of them even used to work for Glenn Beck. But when
Hmm.
they get into actually making the decisions, it's a bait and switch type of a situation. And so and then you go in and you felt that you brought in additional votes, and then all of a
Hmm.
sudden those people either folded, or do you think that is it possible that they were duplicitous or that they were deceptive when they were running and then they just show their true colors? What do you like? Did you have anything that shows that it was a bait and switch, or do you have anything that shows that it was something that they just were like, I can't handle the pressure, I'm just going to cave?
I think it's a manifold response. I
Hmm.
think they can't handle the pressure because
Hmm.
whenever pressure comes, they fold. They
Yeah.
push somebody out front holding the bucket and then they scream at them for not putting down the bucket. Congratulations. Um, and then I think that there is some duplicitousness. There's one thing to talk about liberty on the campaign trail, but if you can't manifest a vote that preserves liberty, get out of the space.
Right.
Either be honest that you're a coward or pony up some courage
Hmm.
because there's no in between. And then I think that they are much more comfortable. Um, for example, there's one board member that just wants to be pretty and popular. She has no interest in policy and speaks very valley girlish, and I mean you'll know exactly who I'm talking about if you watch a board meeting, because the reality is that we can't play stupid all the time. At some point we have to debate.
Hmm.
And so when you care more about being pretty and popular than you do about formulating good policy, you're not going to do what's right. And when you care more about preserving the public's view of you as opposed to doing good work, you're not going to do what's right. The reality is, our media in this state is corrupted, and we have members on our board that use power plays, and they play with the public perception of other members in order to browbeat them.
Hmm.
That is a tactic that they use, and you have to be okay saying, I don't care what you say about me. I'm going to go do what's right, and I'm going to communicate to my constituents why. And the reality is, when the browbeating came, the cowardice showed up, and it showed up in volumes that could not be ignored.
Gotcha. Okay. So, I'd like if you could you go through your resignation, not resignation, but your announcement that I almost followed for the same line that the media played. Can you read to us your
Yeah,
statement that you said you were not going to run again? I think that would be really good for our viewers to hear you say those.
absolutely. I'm going to put it up on the screen here
Yeah.
and just read it right to you. I just when I wrote it, and believe it or not, when I wrote it, I had no high blood pressure. And it's weird to me how the statement has been described, because when I wrote it, I had zero high blood pressure. I just sat down and I said, my constituents need to know, the electorate needs to know, and how do I formulate this while I'm honest, forthright, and to the point. And so,
Mhm.
reading it, I just said, my fellow citizens and the great state of Utah. Today, I declare without apology or hesitation that I will not seek re-election to the Utah State Board of Education. I'm done lending my name, my vote, and my silence to a corrupt and morally bankrupt system that no longer serves the children or families of this state. The corruption inside the Utah State Board of Education and the broader educational establishment is not subtle. It is brazen, pervasive, and rotting the soul of public education. Nearly every decision is now driven by not so hidden agendas, political cowardice, financial kickbacks, and raw personal ambition, not by what is best for students. The USBE has become a closed club that wages war on the minds, values, and innocence of our children while systematically stripping parents of any meaningful voice.
At the Tree of Liberty Society, we're not just studying history, we're restoring the principles that built a free people. This movement isn't funded by corporations or politicians, it's built by people, patriots who care enough to act. Now you can stand shoulder to shoulder with us through YouTube memberships, a simple way to strengthen the cause of liberty while gaining access to deeper discussions, exclusive content, and direct engagement with the society. As a patriot, for just $1.09 a month, you'll carry your badge of support with the loyalty icons, custom emojis, members-only live chats, and priority replies to your comments. At the Minuteman level, for just $6.99 a month, you'll get early access to new videos and all the benefits of Patriot Day. Digital call to arms for those ready to act. The Sons of Liberty tier at $9.99 brings you even closer, with personal shoutouts, connections on social media, and every perk from the earlier levels. And for those who wish to help lead the charge, the Founders Club at just $19.99 a month opens the door to members-only live streams, exclusive videos, and all the rewards of the previous levels, direct access to the conversations shaping the future of liberty. If you believe liberty is worth defending, not only in word but in action, then join us, not as spectators of history, but as participants in its
This is more than mere incompetence. It is betrayal on a grand scale by the very people you elected. Layer upon layer of dysfunction, mirrored and magnified in the Utah legislature, has turned governance into a circus of gridlock, self preservation, and faux theatrical outrage that accomplishes nothing. Good ideas are buried, brave voices are punished, and the status quo is protected at all cost. This chaos is not accidental. It is the design of those who profit from it. I ran for this office to fight for you, your children, your values, and your right to be heard. And instead, I have been forced to watch as even the loudest, quote, conservative voices fold, trade their votes for favor and money, or abandon every promise they made on the campaign trail. The Republican Party platform means nothing inside those walls. The word of the Lord means even less. Your concerns about pornography in libraries, radical gender ideology in classrooms, the erosion of academic excellence, and the assaults on parental rights are mocked, ignored, or drowned out by the shrill demands of special interest and the timid silence of those who fear losing their seat more than losing their soul. I will not play this game any longer. I refuse to be a prop in their theater of fake reform. Serving the families and students of District 8 has been a great honor. You've trusted me, you believed in me, and I've fought with everything I have. But the weight of corruption, the chaos, and the spiritual abuse I have witnessed has become unbearable. Walking away is not surrender. It is the only honest act left to me, and a blazing call for the reckoning this state so desperately needs. My final message to every parent in Utah is blunt, and it is urgent. Get your children out of Utah's government schools as quickly as possible. Real change is not coming. The system is not broken. It is working exactly as the corrupt intend it to work. Your children's minds, hearts, and futures are not safe inside of it. With unyielding resolve and unwavering love for the families of District 8, Christina.
Wow. Now I think our listeners know exactly why I had you on. So there are some key points in that I wanted to bring out and to
Okay.
ask you if you'd be able to give us some specifics.
Sure.
So the first one being kickbacks.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that? Anything specific?
Well, as everybody knows, when you are running for office, certain people want to give you money
Mhm.
and they expect something for their money. They expect it. And a lot of times that comes on the campaign trail. Sometimes it comes during non election cycles. Sometimes it comes in the form of gifts. Other times it comes in the form of just a donation to your campaign account. There is one specific board member who decides to wrap up presents and little notes and saunter around the boardroom giving out gifts. It's weird. It's a weird behavior. I'm not going to lie. When you watch board meetings online, you really need to be in the boardroom because it's mind-blowing to watch the AstroTurf style corruption that goes on.
Mhm.
There's also the idea that board members give other board members money. And so if you've never looked at disclosures.utah.gov, and I'm not going to pretend that I did not give people funding for their campaigns. I did. I believe I gave individuals $100. That was my contribution. I did not, however, give them $1,000, $500. That just didn't happen. And then you'll notice that money will go into election accounts in non-election cycles. And that's where you really have to go, wait, what? Or when a candidate has tens upon tens of thousands of dollars and they're getting more money from either outside people or from other board members, you have to wonder why. Why do you need that money? What is it for? And how are you going to be spending that money? Because it's supposed to be spent on the election cycle.
Mhm.
So when you're tens upon tens of thousands of dollars in your account, and then board members are giving you more money or other outside sources, I think it's deeply concerning. And then other times it's tickets. So one thing I've asked people to ask board members is any board member that went to the governor's gala, who bought your ticket? Because accepting that ticket is a violation of Utah law. And
Hmm.
then the second question they need to ask is who bought your spouse's ticket? Because the governor's gala is not an inexpensive event to attend. So it's things like that. It's things like that that people really need to start to question. Utah law says that sitting representatives cannot accept a gift, literally like a gift, outside the campaign, like the public process, in excess of $50. Well, I don't know if you've been to dinner lately, but you can hardly go to dinner with your
Yeah,
spouse.
you can't even go to Texas Roadhouse for less than $50.
Exactly my point. And so we've just got some things going on that are deeply unethical, and in my opinion, it's when you lack integrity, it's easy to do.
Yeah. So that's, did you see anything specific where someone, it was obvious someone traded money or a gift for a vote or
Mhm.
their voice or something like that?
Oh, I would say so, absolutely. When when you have individuals who campaign on certain principles, or they say, I believe this, and this, and then it comes time to pony up that vote to produce that change, and they don't make it to the finish line, you go, hmm. And then Christina, being the cyber sleuth she is, starts stalking on social media. And I go, oh, I see it now. It's here, here, here. And then I go to disclosures.utah.gov and I go, okay, there it is. And so again, you have to do your own homework, but I've reported the things that I've found to the appropriate authorities, and it is my opinion that people need to do their own work and hold people accountable in the election cycle.
So when
And
you
you
report them,
mhm,
does it come across as they don't care?
basically,
Yeah.
so if you report something through the board, it's an inherent conflict of interest because the board investigating the board. Sorry, they're going to cut and clip that. Should we do it twice for them?
We've investigated ourselves and we found we did.
Yeah. And it's the ultimate conundrum, and it happens in Utah a lot. I'm sure you've seen it. The lieutenant governor investigates herself, says nothing to see here. The same happens with the board. When there's a problem with the board investigates themselves and says nothing to see here. There was one that I had gotten the the investigation cycle to a certain point, and it was quashed within like 30 minutes and like formalized from very high up. We are not touching this with a 10-foot pole. And I'm like, well, if there's nothing wrong, why not investigate it?
Right.
Like, why are we kiboshing even looking into it and evaluating the evidence that was put forward?
Right.
But they didn't even want to look at the evidence. And to me, that's corruption.
Hmm.
And so we've got to start looking at things when your board members or your representatives are doing things that are, we'll put it in quotes, out of character with what they campaigned on. We really need to start looking at who they're schlepping for, if that makes
Hmm.
sense. Who are
Yeah.
they taking advice from? And sometimes they're taking advice from people they've met along the way, and they were not discerning enough to understand that that person is deeply corrupt themselves. Sometimes they're taking advice from people who gave them money during the campaign cycle, which is something I warned individuals against. You never take money from someone you don't know well, because when you accept money, you accept input, and when you accept input, somebody wants something for that money. Make no mistake about it. The people that support your campaign expect something in return. And that, speaking of which, that's another question that the voters should ask. Exactly why is the real estate association invested in school board races?
Because of property taxes, right?
Well, we have no control over property taxes.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
Nothing.
There you go.
That would be a local board issue.
Right.
So why is the real estate association invested in state board of education races?
Good point.
And I would really encourage people to look at the disclosures of their elected officials. And I think we should be asking big questions, really big questions. When you have legislators giving thousands upon thousands of dollars, if you don't think that those legislators expect something in return in the boardroom, you would be wrong.
Especially with how
And
corrupt the legislatures are.
mhm,
Legislators are.
yeah, it's an interesting environment. But when you campaign on something, it's very easy to say those things on the campaign trail. And to me, it's really easy to manifest that in the boardroom because
Mhm.
I have what I call the PS Club, pound sand. I told the voters this was what I was going to do. I'm going to do this. And everybody else, right here, this is who I said I was. This is who I'm going to be. And I'm not going to change because of peer pressure.
Or a
But
campaign donation or whatever.
yeah, exactly. My peers, however, respond differently. Um, it's just very weird. I mean, the press can change their minds. The fear of being in the press. One person said that to me. I can't vote this way because they'll put my name in a headline.
Well, then why'd you even run? Holy cow.
Exactly. And the fear of bad press. The number of things that people have said about me that are completely and utterly untrue is uncountable. I don't think my family has enough fingers and toes to number all of the false things, like utterly, overtly false, not misleading, outright lies. You know what? If you didn't think that was going to happen, you were ignorant.
Oh,
And if
same
you
here.
don't want to take that on your shoulders and put up kind of a talk to the hand sort of a mentality, get out of office because it's going to be a long road to hoe and you will not enact the change you want to see if your courage only extends as far as the headline.
Well, it seems like they also turn on each other. Like, I can't remember when Natalie Klein got out, but were
Yeah.
you on the board during the same time that she was?
I was on the board when Natalie was on the board, yes.
And then
Mhm.
and the attacks on her and the things that happened there and the people on the board that turned against her and called her
Yeah.
name.
Oh, well, exactly. Well, and to be fair, I was accused of that. It's not truthful, but I was accused of turning on Natalie.
Mm,
Um, and but there was a lot of things that happened in that debacle that were not fair and sporting.
yeah,
The board had no business producing some pseudo ministry of truth and trying to police online speech.
right.
It's absurd. It's a violation of the First Amendment. Our board bylaws were in violation of the First Amendment. I do believe that that section is fixed now, but unfortunately, nobody would take it up as long as that board member was still elected. And there were some things that happened, and it is what it is, right? But when we go into executive session and we do the work, and we come out and we say, okay, and as a board member, when I say, okay, I've agreed to X, and then what happens on the boardroom floor is not what was agreed to, I take huge issue with that. Huge. And then board leadership released to the public and the press a fake document that I had never seen. And then all of a sudden, I'm held accountable for the document
Wow.
they made public facing when I did not vote for that document. I voted for a different one.
Wow.
That's corruption on its face.
To say the least, that's putting it nicely, I would say. It's fraud.
And and there's been multiple times that I have sent emails and we had a different training session. I brought it up in that training session because I keep going back to that moment, because it wasn't just Christina who was held accountable for that. Member Klein was held accountable for that. And that document was not the document that members were casting their vote upon.
Mm.
And that's not fair to anybody in that space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when that seems like a next for in your thing as well, it's betrayal, not incompetence. So that's as well
Hmm.
as not accidental. It's by design. So,
Yeah.
um, that what what you're experiencing, and what you're explaining to us is that there are people that are designing to do bad, to deceive
Yes.
and to do it, and it's not because they were mistaken. This is on purpose, right? There's, it's being a mistake is an untruth on accident. A lie
Hmm.
is an untruth on purpose, and
Yes.
it is clear that these things are being done on purpose.
Yes.
And then the other thing that you said on there that I've been preaching forever is get kids out of government school.
Hmm.
It is not safe. Spiritually, it's not safe. Physically, it's not safe.
Hmm.
Mentally, it is not safe. Academically, it is something
Hmm.
that anybody that that can make the sacrifice should do, and that they should do whatever
Hmm.
they can to get their
Yeah.
kid out of government school.
Hmm. Yeah. So do you want to talk about a few of those real fast?
Yeah, please.
Okay. So, I am a teacher. A lot of people
Mhm.
don't know that. It's weird to me because it's all over my website, but um, some people don't realize that I'm a teacher. It's the oddest thing to get interesting, nasty ground. Years later, I know what schools are like. I know what public education is like. I'm actually been in public education for a very long time. I had talked to one of my peers one day, and she said, I noticed this message, but I don't understand. And I said, well, first of all, you did I say teachers suck? No, nowhere in that did I say that.
Right.
But I had to, I conversed with her and I interfaced with her for a little bit because she and I are good friends. We work together. We have students that we share in common. And I said, you have shared with me that the lack of administrative support and the the chaos that continues to ensue in the institution you're in only allowed you to get through 2 months of content last year. And she goes, yes. And I said, tell me that the futures of those students is safe in your building.
Hmm.
And she kind of got a tear in her eye. And I said, no, 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 no. This is not about you. This is about a system that puts a dollar amount on a misbehaving child instead of addressing the behavior.
Hmm.
And she took kind of this deep breath. And I said, I'm not attacking you. I'm saying we have systemic issues and change is not coming. And that doesn't mean that I'm going to leave teaching. That doesn't mean I expect you to leave teaching because somebody has to go in and do the work. Otherwise, our entire society will fall apart. But for those that can, I do recommend getting your children out of Utah's government education system. I don't see change coming in that area. I see another conversation that I had with an educator was just recently, and I had to remind her. I said, "How many years have you worn shin guards in your school?" And and she, these conversations kind of make people, and then they take a breath, and all of a sudden they're so unguarded because their defensive walls are down because they go, "I get it." And I said, "So you had to wear soccer shin guards at the direction of your administrator because a child was assaulting you all the time. Tell me that the other students in that space felt physically or emotionally safe when the person in charge is being attacked by another student."
Hmm.
And there's just this kind of, from teachers, when I speak to them and they actually have conversations with me instead of, talking about me behind my back without seeking to understand first.
Hmm.
When when I had to, there a lot of accountability comes with putting something like this out there. Lots of accountability comes. But who didn't talk crazy about it? It's those that understand. There's small communities in this state, very small communities, and their parents know what's going on in their schools, and a lot of it is very, very different from the greater Salt Lake landscape. And they're not screaming and yelling. They know exactly what I'm talking about. There are so many people who get it. And they're called cheetah drills, owl drills, whatever you want to call them, where kids are evacuated from a space where the main room, the offending child or the misbehaving child is left in there to throw chairs, chuck desks, run with scissors, whatever it might be, and the remaining students are evacuated from the space. And we have some spaces in our state where that happens, and by some I mean many, where that happens multiple times a day.
It's insane.
And I'm like, can you with a clear conscience tell me that those students and their future is safe in an environment where we are evacuating students for their own safety? And many of these teachers really took a deep breath, and they're like, but we're trying. And I said, nobody ever accused you of not trying.
Right. Well, then I think
Nobody.
that gets into your point of it's not broken. This stuff's on purpose. The
Mhm,
media focuses on like the culture war stuff, the furries
mhm.
down in Nephi. I think it
Yeah,
was it Nephi or
it was Nebo.
Nebo district.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
so, that's what the media wants to focus on,
Mhm.
but nobody's talking about the physical danger that is going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I am highly vocally vehement in the idea of parents getting their kids out of government schools.
Mhm.
My older sister, she's a government school teacher. My
Mhm.
aunt was a government school teacher
Mhm.
in Orem for many, many years, many decades. And so it's not like I'm, totally. And I worked in the school district, and in fact, um, I spent some time because I wanted to show that it wasn't just one age group, and there was, and so I was a sub and went from school to school, different grades,
Mhm.
garden, all the way up to seniors,
Mhm.
and from the little kids, there were teachers that would rub crystals on the children's heads every day to help them learn better, and then you go to the extreme of the juniors and seniors, and they were being shown slideshows of photographs, not drawings, not diagrams,
Mhm.
photographs of every single sex act that there is. And when I actually worked to expose it to the media
Mhm.
that would actually talk about it, what happened was I was called into the superintendent's office and I was threatened. And then I get back to the classroom, and the teacher tells me if it happens again, that she couldn't guarantee my protection. And so that's the kind of thing that
Mhm.
that's my experience of it's not
Mhm.
broken. This is how it's designed to act. And
Yeah.
then you get into the Agenda 2030 stuff, and that's just a whole nother level of destruction by design.
Yeah.
Um,
Which by the way, I don't know, my viewers might not be your viewers.
sure.
2030 is a published agenda. It's not a conspiracy theory.
Oh yeah, totally.
It's a published agenda. So many people will say, "Oh, that's conspiracy." I'm like, that
No,
is a document put out by the United Nations. It's a real thing.
it's
Let's
really
not. I sometimes have to giggle because even SDG 4 is a real thing.
right.
UNESCO puts out documents. Those documents we read, and it's the greatest gaslighting and abuse of humanity when these documents are put out and they say we're going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in this order.
Yep.
Then they do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in that order, and then people say, "Hey, we don't believe in this. That assaults liberty," and they say we're not doing any of those things.
Right.
How do you even respond to that? And a lot of that takes place even at the Utah State Board of Education. It takes
Mhm.
place in the Utah legislature when you have franchise legislation and franchise policy direct out of the UN direct out of the United Nations, coming down through organizations like ALEC and the NCSL and some of these places. And people will say, oh, this is not franchise legislation. This is model policy. Honey, if you put that in a plagiarism tracker, you would not be allowed to submit because you're like 90% overlap with the UN model
Right.
policy. It
Just change
it's
the word, it doesn't, that means the
yeah.
same thing, but you just change the word and all of a sudden
hmm
it's magically something else.
Yes. And so, we see that stuff come in through our board. We see it come in through other avenues, including our state legislature, which I think, in my opinion, uh, people forget to really understand the legislature's hand in so much of this.
Mhm.
So much of the things we have going on in schools, the board didn't put them there. The legislature put them there.
Mhm.
The social credit stuff that comes out of the early warning system, that stuff is straight out of the Utah State Legislature. The gifting of your child's private information that personally belongs to your child was gifted to a third party, and the USBE was a pass through, but that was done by the Utah State Legislature. The board didn't do those things. And so
Mhm.
that's why when I said, it's mirrored and magnified in the Utah State Legislature, we have some real issues. And if people don't start looking at their elected representatives and saying, how did you vote? And holding them accountable for that vote by not putting them back into office again, we this state will not be lost by a seismic event. It is lost by one compromise after another, after another, after another. And eventually we will we will end up in a place that's no longer a recognizable Utah.
Yeah.
And I know to some people Utah is no longer recognizable. Um, I moved here 10 years ago. I thought I was moving to the beacon of conservatism. Little did I know that that was not true even a decade ago.
Yeah.
Uh, as best I can tell based on the code, it wasn't even true 2 decades ago. But
Correct.
um, yeah, and you've done this work in Utah longer than I have, so
And that's the thing is, and if parents don't need to wait for the right guy to get elected before they can have their kids be safe for
mhm,
education. And so that's why it's so important. They pull the kids out. That doesn't mean we give up. That doesn't mean we don't
yeah,
do anything. It just means we don't do what doesn't work. and
yeah,
and so that's what we need to help people understand is
mhm,
they can take charge right now,
yes,
and we can work to be able to build a culture where good people can actually be in office. But until we do that, we need to make sure that our kids are safe. That's our
yeah,
responsibility as a parent.
yep, absolutely.
So, well, thank you so much for joining us. Is there something you'd like to
Oh,
just kind of wrap things up, of
oh,
final message you'd like to share with our viewers?
I get to say something. Well, I think we should talk about maybe some good things.
Okay.
Um, and so, uh, you know, the past few years, I see incremental good things that are compromised by mounds of poor decisions. But I do think that we need to take things into the public space more and more and more and more. And solutions are there, but they're often met with a recoil. I call it a recoil or a porcupine effect here in Utah. It reminds me of the movie Sing when the porcupine gets angry and all of her quills go everywhere. There seems to be this recoil effect that happens here. Speak anyway. Speak anyway. I think that there are solutions on in the forefront as I move forward. I'm going to cough. I'm so sorry. You can edit that out, right?
Yep.
I think there are solutions on the forefront, one of which is to repeal the ESSA. And the Trump administration has made lots of talk, the Linda McMahon at the U.S. Department of Education, lots of talk about returning education to the states. Until the ESSA is repealed, that will not happen. We have to repeal the ESSA, and the dissolution of the U.S. Department of Education can only happen with an act of Congress. So, this idea that it's going away is a complete misnomer. I would call it propaganda
Mhm.
because it has to be done in an orderly fashion. And then we need to repeal our federal education code, not to be confused with the IDEA. The IDEA is very different from federal education code. I'm talking about the ESSA and multiple other pieces of federal legislation. But we need to repeal that. We also need to stop sending our state dollars to the federal government to be tied up with strings and sent back. We need to work on a revenue neutral funding plan for Utah that keeps our federal dollars here and so they never leave the state. There's no reason that should happen. If we had the political will and the courage to do that, we could do that. There's a pathway and a plan for that. I think that not taking the money, government save me from government, is one of the most absurd things I've ever heard in my life. And nowhere is that more real than in what we call the quote unquote school choice movement. If you are going to homeschool your children, do it without the money.
Oh,
Do it
absolutely.
without the money. With government funding comes government regulation. And the school choice movement is nothing more than a communist endeavor to put all educational options under one umbrella.
Amen.
That
Preach it.
that that's all it is. And so I think that there are solutions, and I would encourage parents, don't expect your child to be the missionary when it's your job to disciple them.
No kidding.
This idea that there's got to be some good kids in school, that's not your responsibility. It is not your responsibility as a parent to provide the mentor or the exemplar for somebody else's child who's struggling. That's not your job. Your job is to mentor and disciple your child to build them up to be the best they can be. And those there's solutions, there's homeschool co-ops, there's homeschool communities, there are private institutions that don't take money, that govern what they can and cannot teach inside the school. There's so many resources in this state, and there are people who've come together to build each other up, work with each other to produce an education outside public ed for your child. And I think Utah needs to realize that inside government ed, I truly don't believe change is coming in this state. Outside government ed, there is a war force to be reckoned with. And if you're talking UFA, UFA is government ed.
Hmm.
You have to remember the only thing that is outside of government ed is that which is not funded by the government. And I
Yep.
think there are solutions, but I think we need to really rally our elected representatives to get there. Revenue neutral and repeal the ESSA are two of the big ones.
And
So,
people that think, well, I pay taxes and do I should get it back? Well, okay, but that's not what's going on.
no.
You're getting the money, so they're getting the control. Doesn't matter
Yes.
that you're supposedly getting it back. You're losing control.
Well, you're losing control and it's not really your money. The
Right.
average
It was
like the
theft. It
average
was gone.
yeah, the average it is a universal basic income from the
Right.
school choice lobby themselves.
Oh,
They
they're
call it
getting more than
UBI.
they ever put in for sure.
They get and when I say more, the average family in Utah that earns about $100,000 will pay at or about at most about $5,000 in income tax.
Hmm.
Well, the UFA scholarship is well over $5,000
Per
for a
kid.
single child.
Yeah.
Mhm. So it's not your money, it's your neighbor's money.
Yep.
And interestingly enough, I floated a motion at the Board of Ed to ask the legislature to create a tax exemption for any family who did not use public ed up and into the amount of the WPU per child, but no more than that family paid in income tax. And believe it or not, all the people who are supposedly about education freedom voted no.
Absolutely.
And so it goes to tell you that the school choice lobby is not about freedom, it's about control.
Absolutely.
And so when people are in that space, you need to be highly speculative and really ask the hard questions because some of them don't even have a clue. They think they know what they're talking about and they don't. And then when you ask them questions or show them evidence, they'll recoil and they'll get all porcupiney and they'll say, "Well, that must be fake." No, no. Like the the number one school choice evangelist literally works for the United Nations as um a policy lab person. So what can you do with that,
What a
right?
coincidence.
Yeah, exactly. So I have been really blessed to be here with you, Ben. Thank you for the opportunity to
Thank you.
talk. I really appreciate it.
I really appreciate you being willing to be strong and out there and say the strong words. It's something that more people in your position need to do, because it is much worse than people realize.
Hmm.
And but you have the media and government complex working together to tell everyone all is well, and that
Hmm.
there's nothing to see here. Move along.
Yeah.
And so I appreciate it when folks like yourself are willing to say the hard things. So thank you so
Well,
much.
you're very welcome. I hope you have a great day.